Hey, what's going on, guys? It's ETA Prime back here again. Today we're going to be taking a look at this HP pre-built Ryzen powered PC that I recently picked up from Best Buy. Now this was on sale for $450. I actually posted this up in the community tab on YouTube, and I had a bunch of people wanting me to test this out, mainly because it's powered by the Ryzen 7 4700G APU. And that's the main reason I personally even thought about picking this up. I'm a big fan of these APUs, and the 4700G definitely looks like a really good performer, but unfortunately there's basically two ways that you can get a hold of that CPU. Buy an OEM pre-built like this one here, or go gray market and pick the CPU up on eBay, but most of the time you're going to pay around the same price I paid for this fully built system here. In this video, we're going to take a look at the performance of this APU. We're going to test out some 4K video playback, some web browsing, I'm going to run some benchmarks, and then we'll get into some gaming and see what this thing can really handle. But before we jump right over there, I want to give you a quick rundown on this system. Now, the one downside to this machine right out of the box is it only comes with a single stick of RAM, and if you're familiar with these APUs, you know they love dual channel RAM. This is actually running at 3200 megahertz, but we only have a single 8GB stick, and in order to unlock the maximum performance of this APU, I will be adding dual channel RAM to this unit. But I will show you the difference in performance while running some benchmarks between single channel RAM and dual channel RAM, and it definitely makes a huge difference on the 4700G. So what I'm going to be doing is adding 16 gigabytes of DDR4 running at 3200 megahertz to this unit. We got two 8GB sticks here, making it dual channel. But what you could end up doing to save a couple bucks is just keep the 8GB stick that's in here and just add an extra stick. I already had a matching pair of RAM here, so I figured I'd go ahead and throw it in this machine. So as for the specs on this pre-built HP, we have the Ryzen 7 4700G, 8 cores, 16 threads, base clock of 3.6 GHz with a boost up to 4.4. Since this is an APU, we have those built-in Radeon 8 graphics at 2100 MHz, and I've added that 16 gigabytes of DDR4 running at 3200 MHz. Out of the box, it does come with a 256 gigabyte NVMe SSD, Wi-Fi 5, Bluetooth 4.2, and Windows 10 Home pre-installed. And there is a spot for either a 3.5-inch drive or a 2.5-inch drive, and all the cabling is inside of the unit. So if you do want to add an extra drive to up the storage on this thing, it's super easy to do. So I think I'm about ready to go, but first thing I need to do is get this set up. I want to install all the applications we're going to test out, and then we'll jump right into it. Okay, so here it is. This is running Windows 10 Home. We have that Ryzen 7 4700G, 8 cores, 16 threads, 16 gigabytes of DDR4 running at 3200 megahertz. And the built-in Radeon 8 graphics. Now, one thing I always like to do with these built-in APUs is make sure we're running at the correct speed. So I'm going to go to the graphics section over here in CPU-Z. We're sitting at 400 megahertz right now, but this should jump up to 2100 megahertz. And there we have it. I've done extended testing with this, and it will stay at 2100 megahertz indefinitely. So we are running those built-in graphics at full speed, and they will work at their maximum performance, at least with that 3200 megahertz RAM. And unfortunately, we can't go up with the speed of the RAM due to the motherboard limitation, so we're stuck at 3200 megahertz. We could get a little more out of it if we could go up to 3600 or even 4000. But this system will not allow it. Now, like you saw when I unboxed this, we had a single stick of RAM in there. It was 8 gigs at 3200 megahertz, but adding another stick of RAM to a system like this is going to increase performance dramatically, especially on the GPU side of things. And just to give you an idea of this, I ran 3D Mark Night Raid on single channel RAM, still at 3200 megahertz. Then I added that second stick and ran it again. On single channel RAM, we scored a total of 8,866. Our graphics score was 8,595. With dual channel, as you can see, we scored a total of 15,325, with the graphics score coming in at 15,954. And we actually gained a little bit on the CPU side of things, so if you do want this to work at its maximum potential, definitely add dual channel RAM. 2 sticks to this unit, make sure it's 3200 megahertz RAM. So let's just say you wanted to pick this up as your everyday desktop for web browsing, video playback, streaming, and things like that. It's going to work out fine. Here we have the Edge browser. We're going to head over to the HP website real quick. Just go to the home page. I mean, everything loads up super quick here. No issues whatsoever. That 4700G is definitely pushing it out with this. When it comes to 4K video playback, you're going to have no issues whatsoever. If you want to stream from YouTube, your favorite sites like Netflix and things like that, go full screen with it. Stats for nerds. Up here, we have our frame counter. This is sitting at 4K, as you can see here. and it'll do 4K video playback all day. Even if you want to stream from a Plex server, it's going to work out. I mean, this would actually work great as a Plex server itself. With those 8 cores and 16 threads, you'd be able to serve up a bunch of 4K streams at one time with a system like this. And just like it sits, you don't have to add an external GPU or anything like that, or a dedicated GPU. It'll work for Plex like it is. Now it's time to move over to some benchmarks. First up, we have Geekbench 5. At the top here, we have the 4700G, which we have in this HP unit. And on the bottom, the 3400G, which is a readily available APU that you can build with right now. Now going into this, I knew the 4700G was going to beat it out in multi-core because we do have 4 more cores here and 4 more threads. But I was pretty surprised to see how much of a jump that 4700G has over the 3400G in single core, coming in at 1220 versus 918. Next up, I wanted to test out some Blender performance. This is strictly CPU. The 3400G finished this BMW test in 2 minutes and 20 seconds, and the 4700G took it out in 51 seconds. It was actually a little under 51 seconds. So now it's time to focus specifically on this HP PC with that 4700G. Here we have PC Mark X with a total score of 5,031. Next up, we have Cinebench R23, and we got a really impressive score here with the 4700G, coming in at 11,470 for a total multi-core score. 3D Mark Night Raid, 15,325. Firestrike, 3,471. And finally, Time Spy, with a 1,395. And for integrated graphics, this is looking really good on the GPU side. So far, performance on this machine has been absolutely amazing, and going into this I actually had a pretty good idea of how this 4700G would do in the machine like this. I'm really glad that HP allowed it to boost up to its maximum potential on the GPU and the CPU side. But the main thing I was really interested in with this PC was gaming, so let's go ahead and test out some games. I got 11 to go through. Let's see how it does. First up, we have Forza Horizon 4. I wanted to keep as many of these games at 1080p as I could, so a lot of them are at 1080p, low, medium settings, but with this one here, as you can see, we're at 1080p, low settings, and I was getting an average of 53 FPS by the end of this. Now, it will do well over 60 at 720p medium settings, but like I mentioned, I really wanted to keep it at 1080. Next up, Rocket League 1080p, performance mode, got an average FPS of 111. Here's Fortnite 1080p with 100% resolution scaling using that new performance mode, and by the end, I had an average of 98 FPS, so this is very playable, and if you just wanted to rock this at 60, you could jack some of the settings up and just lock that VSync on. So when it comes to Skyrim Special Edition, I thought this system was going to do way better than it is. We're at 1080p, low settings, and we can't quite get that 60 FPS lock on this thing. We averaged 51 with the Special Edition version, but if you wanted to go with OG Skyrim, jack this up to high, and you can run it at 1080p high all day long at 60. So this is the only game you're going to see running at 720p in this video. This is Doom Eternal using the Vulkan backend, 720p, low settings. We got an average of 58 FPS by the end of this one. CSGO 1080p, medium settings, we got an average of 103 FPS, and I was pretty sure that we'd be able to run this at full speed, medium high settings, and for sure if you jack this up to high 1080, you're still going to get a decent frame rate out of it. Here's Subnautica 1080p, low, medium mix, and if you play this game, you know you might want to jack some of those settings up to medium. And that's really why I did it here, because it does look a lot better. But we can't quite hit 60 with this game at 1080p. GTA 5 1080p, normal settings, an average of 64 FPS. Now this is what I like to see. I've been waiting for an APU that could do this at 1080p over 60, and the 4700G can definitely do it. Overwatch 1080p, medium settings, we ended up with an average of 78 FPS. This is just a very well optimized game, and I've had really good luck in the past on different APUs and different integrated graphics. This is just one of those games that works really well on a lot of different systems.
Situation analysis finalized. No hostiles detected.
Taking a look at total system power consumption from the wall using a kilowatt meter. At idle, 12.8 watts, 4K video playback jumped up more than I thought it would to 22.4. When gaming at 1080p, we averaged 52.2 watts, and the maximum that I could get this thing to draw out of the wall with my extreme test was 73.7 watts. And under everyday use, you'll never see this wattage from the wall. That was with all 8 cores and 16 threads maxed out at 100%, and the built-in Radeon 8 graphics pegged at 100. Overall, I'm really impressed with this machine. Now, it's definitely not a high-end gaming machine, but as you saw, I mean, you can definitely get away with a lot of stuff at 1080p. It does a really good job for having integrated graphics. Keep in mind, I did add that dual-channel RAM to up that GPU performance, and it's definitely a must with a machine like this if you want to do any kind of gaming. So basically, I mean, if you're in the market for an everyday PC that can do a little bit of gaming on the side, I would highly recommend something like this. Now, it doesn't have to be this specific HP machine, but basically any machine with a 4700G and the ability to add dual channel RAM will net you the same performance. Overall, I could highly recommend something like this. But that's going to wrap it up for this video. Really appreciate you watching. If you have any questions or if there's anything else you want to see running on this machine here, just let me know in the comments below. I'm going to be messing around with this for a little while. I definitely want to test some emulation out on it. But if there's anything else you want to see running in Windows or Linux, just let me know and I'll see if I can get a video made. But that's it for this one. And like always, thanks for watching.